Let's talk about affordable housing in Canada. The CD Howe report obviously blames the affordability on housing in Canada on the builders. And I don't think that's fair, or nor do I think that's just. And if you want a really good example of this, I encourage you to check out Shane Wenzel's channel, Wenzel. Shane happens to be the owner and president of Shane Homes, which is a large home construction company in the Calgary region, and does absolute great content as it relates to builders. But I want to address this more on the development side because he brings up some really good examples for the builders. But the developers, I think, is also lost in this CD Howe report. I mean, they say that the affordability crisis, and there is an affordability crisis, is a fact that the builders are not able to keep up with the innovation in the industry, the modularization, and just all of those simple aspects to creating affordable, attainable homes for the general populace. And I think it's a little bit more in depth than that, and they're hiding that aspect. And I really want to look at it on the development sort of side and where the housing crisis actually comes from. Because builders build for what the market can absorb. Developers develop for what the market can afford as well. We have certain constraints though. And one prime example, if you really want to dive into this, is go look at Thomas Sowell. Thomas Sowell wrote a research article for the US government talking about affordability and attainability. And I believe this was going back maybe 20 years ago now. And it focused on the fact that every time a municipality changes zoning or applies zoning to lands, it increases the cost. And there's a logic behind that. When we make some lands available for development, we've automatically restricted others. So we've put a constraint on the supply. And that drives the value of the lands that were put into that bucket for building and developing up because they have a greater, higher potential. So that's one aspect of it. The other one, though, is the applications and the offsite servicing fees and the land planning policies. All of these things really do increase the costs to developable land and ultimately to the builders. Let's look at it as a prime example. I've raised this example in the past before too. On a developer, we're required to do offsite. So there's either an offsite levy, a direct connection cost, or work that we need to do. And I've made an example of this in the past. In one of our subdivisions, we were required to upgrade the infrastructure, the road infrastructure on an interchange. Now, this was a very small development, 13 homes, maybe 20 homes at the end of the day kind of thing. So it's in a very tight little area. And that is the interchange that is directly adjacent to that subdivision was a major highway thoroughfare. So the upgrade for us was probably somewhere around, I don't know, 150, 170, just under $200,000. But you take that $200,000 that, us as developers had to do, and that gets put back on the lots because we have to be able to develop to not only deal with our holding costs and our servicing costs. And, we do need to be able to make some money on it. And we're not making a huge amount. Again, we develop based on what is the market will accept, the market will allow, what people will be able to afford and buy. And if we can't deal with that, then if we can't accomplish those numbers, then there's no point for us developing. We need to be able to make that profit. Same thing goes with builders. One of the other factors, and Shane talks about this on the building side, but it's also really relevant on the land development side because if we don't have land developed, you don't have any builders building. And all of these things compound. And the CD Howe report completely missed that. It's the uncertainty. For us as developers, we need to have a level of certainty that we can move through our subdivision applications, our zonings, our infrastructure builds with a level of certainty that we can sell that product or even achieve that product at the end. And that is not always the case. And right now there's a lot going on in British Columbia and throughout the rest of Canada where uncertainty is a strong driving factor in whether or not developers actually will develop a set of land. We have BC land titles issues coming up. You have offsite levies and infrastructure. You have fragmentation as it relates to who approves a subdivision and what that subdivision's for. You've got zoning issues in general. So, just as an example, I think I've talked about this in the past. As a developer, we're looking to provide our builders an option to satisfy a market demand, and that's affordable, attainable homes. For us to do that, though, we need to make some adjustments to the zoning for those builders in the end. We can produce the land with the infrastructure, with the water servicing, the wastewater servicing, the power, electrical communications, etc., the roads, everything that you need there, stormwater management, environmental management, sustainability aspects on there. But at the end of the day, if they can't build a product that will fit the market demand, then it doesn't solve the housing crisis. And when we talk to municipalities, when we talk to provincial authorities that are required for these changes, and we let them know that, look, we've got an ability, we've got a parcel of land here. We want to be able to make that change to the land so that you could do a zero lot line, or you could do a townhome build, or an eightplex, which would might match up to that CMHC MLI select financing from the federal side. It's a 2-year process to make that change at best with no guarantees. So that's what we talk about in terms of that uncertainty. If we have a level of uncertainty that it's going to require us to hold a property for another 2 years, go through and expend the dollars for the potential of a zoning change or a variance to the underlying bylaw that holds those lands and what we can do with them so that we can meet a market demand. And if we're not comfortable with doing that, it's not going to get done. The bottleneck is not on the builders. The bottleneck is not on the developers. We want to build and we want to be able to sell full homes and lots and land that people can actually afford, because there's no benefit for us if we produce something that no one can afford. Now let's also talk about modular. I am going to put my name in the hat here when it comes down to modular. I love modular and it's been around for decades. But the true fact is that modular is not affordable. When we look at our builders and they're building in our developments, and we see them building for $200 to $400 a square foot, just as an example. But if I look at bringing in an affordable home, and I'm not talking a large home, I'm talking a very small home on a modular build, built in a factory, moved out to our location, their construction costs, and for an individual to buy that modular unit, they're pushing 500, $600 a square foot. And that doesn't include the fact that we've got transportation, craning. You still have foundation and connection works to do, and site prep and all of those aspects. The only benefit that there is to modular is definitely it's a great home construction because it's built so that it can travel down a highway. So it is definitely built well. It is definitely built in controlled environments, which is great as well. But the only benefit to it is speed. So we could be prepping the land and that lot, and they could be building the unit, and it can reduce the overall construction time. That's where the innovation lies. But again, there's a bottleneck, and that bottleneck is at the government level. And I know I harp on this all the time because it is needed to be out there. That bottleneck is not at the builders. The innovation is not a requirement for us. It's the fragmentation that we see. I mean, for us in BC, in some of these areas, we have these provincial approving authorities. So we've got the Ministry of Transportation that has to approve a subdivision. And then below that, we've got the municipality. They're part of that process. And then we've got the regional health district. They're part of that process. And then we've got all these other stakeholders that are around there that are part of that process. So there's uncertainty. We submit for a subdivision application and you get that subdivision application, but there's no certainty you're going to get approved. And then you get all the way through the construction. You've expended all of those funds to produce that housing, and it winds back up at the ministry and the municipality, and they all have to sign off down the road. And even though you've done the work, even though you've shown them the work that's going to get done, there's no guarantee they're going to approve it. Does that make you comfortable and want to do the development in the first place? That's just BC. That happens all across Canada. There's so much fragmentation. You see engineers in a municipality that are reviewing engineering reports that aren't qualified in that specific area to review it. So there's these communications back and forth between the engineers. That adds costs. There's also delays and drags at the municipal and provincial levels and the federal level to get anything done in this province or in this country. And those delays are between the between the departments themselves. There, are they signing off in a reasonable time frame? Do they understand the process that needs to get done? You've got inspectors that have never built homes before. And I've seen this. Our builders have talked about this. These inspectors come in and they've never built a home. They don't understand how to build it. They're not engineers, they're not architects. And they look at it and they're just checking a box off, but they don't understand the process of building. And that's on the builder side. We get the same thing on the land development side. Quite often, I have to fight on a provincial level because they want a road built to another parcel of land. And it's called access. And we understand there needs to be access. But unfortunately, you can't build a road that passes their requirement up the side of a mountain straight. It just doesn't happen. Or if there is even a way to do it, the costs far exceed what the profitability on the project might be. So we might have to look at offsite levies and how do those impact the cost of that lot. Here's another example. For us to do a development, we had to double the town's water capacity. That was a $1 million expenditure on the front end. That $1 million expenditure, we have to carry those costs. Unfortunately, that rolls down into the cost of the lots. Every time we're having to deal with government, we see these changes. So, approvals take long. We see in some provinces that our approvals are taking upwards of a year, even though construction is done. How are we supposed to build homes if we can't get approvals? We see development charges. We see offsite levies. These are just simply taxes that roll back onto the property owner, to the purchaser. We see inaccurate infrastructure planning and maintenance. Look at the city of Calgary right now. They've neglected their maintenance on major water lines. This causes huge problems and a lot of uncertainty for individuals. We see federal policy decisions, provincial policy decisions, municipal policy decisions that drive out investment. If no one's willing to invest in an area, you're not going to get lots. You're not going to get homes. And if you're looking for the government to do it for you, unfortunately, that's called communism. And it didn't work and it never has worked. So why do you think it's going to work now? Let the people that know how to make the decisions, that know how to produce the product, be innovative, do what needs to get done so that we can solve the affordability and the housing crisis in Canada. And I'm not going to layer on all the other issues of immigration and anything along those lines. Let's be honest about it. If we can smooth this out and we can clean this up, our builders can build faster, better to suit market conditions and market demands. Our developers can develop faster, produce inventory to satisfy those builders' needs that meet market demands. It may not be large lots, it may be smaller lots, it may be different types of communities. We don't know what it is, but if you let us do it, it will get done and we can satisfy the housing issue. Government has never done anything efficiently, and it never will. Stay tuned for more, and as always, keep shoveling it.